Too many events sometimes leave attendees drained instead of inspired. I, for one, can think of many a time that I've left after being on site at a conference for a couple of days and just needed a 2-week holiday to recover. But what if we flip the script? I'm really excited to welcome Jeff Harry to the stage, and he's going to explore how curiosity, creativity, and gamified experiences can make events that much more meaningful, memorable, and fun. Jeff, over to you.
All right. Thanks so much, Chloe. Let me see here. How do I share my slides here? Oh, there we go. All right, awesome. Hello, everyone. This is Jeff Harry with Rediscover Your Play, and I basically play for a living. I'm a speaker. I used to be an event manager, and I've been in the event world for probably like 20 years, and there's something not right about it right now. And I feel like we all know it, but we haven't put our words to it. So I wanted to explore that today to see where we're going to go. So my title of my workshop is Events Are Broken, but Play Can Fix It. So what I'm going to put out to you first off is I want you to think about for a moment, if you had a magic wand and you could improve events right now, what would you do to change them? What is one thing you could do? Throw it in the chat, write in the chat. I want you to know one way in which you would change events that would make your life so much easier, would take the burden off of you so much. So you can throw that in the chat, and I'll wait to hear those. Because really what I think we have to do is we've been doing events for a specific way for so long that you're almost like, well, it's not broken. So, why would I want to fix it? Like, I don't want to mess up, And it's like, dude, we must be challenging ourselves for something better. Okay. So, all right. So let's dive in. So what we're going to be covering today is we're going to talk about play. So my background is play and positive psychology. Then we're going to talk about why events are broken, or at least why I believe events are broken. And then we're going to talk about how play can fix some of these events. And then hopefully, because I don't want to ever hop on, do something like this, and you're like, oh, that's a really good idea. And then you write it down and then you never look at it again. You put it in a drawer. I'd rather you try some of the things that we actually come up with. And then feel free to message me later. Even if it doesn't work and you're like, that was a horrible idea, Jeff. Great. You tried it. We need to be experimenting more. We need to be taking risks, because what's really interesting, and this happens the same in the speaker world, is so many of us are so risk averse. And I'm like, how are we going to be able to evolve if we're not taking bigger risks when it comes to events? Okay. All right. So I define play as any joyful act where you forget about time, where you're fully immersed in the moment. It's where you are fully you. And if you can create an event that causes a playground, whether it's a trade show, an internal event, a user conference, a major conference, a wedding, if you can get people to actually play, they're much more likely to connect even on a cellular level with them, right? The other thing is play's the opposite of perfection. Perfection is rooted in ego and shame and constantly trying to be right, while play is rooted in curiosity, experimentation, a sense of wonder and awe, right? And in perfection exists a lot in events. I think a lot of us, especially in weddings, some of you are recovering wedding planners, and you know what I'm talking about, right? Where you're just like, everything's got to be perfect, but that is exhausting. It takes out so much from us. So whatever we can do to let go of the perfection and allow for the play actually helps dramatically. And what actually happens when you play, as I talk about this, when the first 4 ways in which you ever played as a kid, or as a baby, it was known as attunement. So when your guardian, your parent, held you up and you locked eyes with them, it's one of the only times your brain waves match identically. And you feel seen, you feel heard, you feel valued, you feel loved, all non-verbally, right? And then you search for that level of attunement for the rest of your life. You search for it in your relationships, you search for it in your friendships, you search for it at work, you search for it at events. You know when an event is attuned, you know when people are vibing, and you know when you're like, this is stilted, this is not feeling good at all, right? So we're constantly looking for opportunities where we can attune attendees, right, with everybody else. What can we do on a regular basis? So we're going to dive into that. Okay. So the reason why play is so important, especially at events, is based off the Steven Johnson quote, you'll find the future where people are having the most fun. If you think about it, if the goal is we need to get as many people to this conference and we're competing against all these other conferences, they're thinking, what is the conference that I had the most fun at? Not the conference that had the most famous people, not the conference where, I shook the most hands, right? Or I met the most people that I could do work with, but where I had real connection. That's what people remember. So what are we doing to actually cultivate real connection on a regular basis during our events? So let's talk about why our events are broken, okay? So right now we're either mailing it in. I'm at an event right now and I was talking to an event planner and they were like, my boss has us doing the same conference every year the same way. Why are we doing it this way? Can't we evolve at all? Like, I get it. They're like, well, it's not broke, don't fix it. But then you can feel the stale energy of it, right? So why are we mailing it in? That's the first reason. A lot of places are mailing it in. Second, we're prioritizing aesthetics over community. Whether you're at a wedding or an internal event or a trade show, like so much, because I know a lot of event planners are they love aesthetics. And don't get me wrong, aesthetics are very important. But like, if you are like figuring out we created a forest for this theme, but no one gets it, then you're just like, I don't know why there's foliage everywhere. I can't connect with people because it's too dark in the room right now. So if we're focused way too much on aesthetics and not thinking about how is the aesthetics connected to community, that's where we lose it. Okay. Third, there's, again, what I talked about, there's such a pressure to be perfect. Even working with your clients to be like, perfection is not what we should be actually going for. We should be going for connection. We should be going for community. You want to make more money, right? Same thing with the trade shows, right? If you want to cultivate more people willing to buy stuff, then they should be having fun. And if it's so stilted in there, their wallets are not going to be, loose enough to actually want to spend. So we have to be challenging ourselves. Are we way too focused on perfection? And then lastly, and I remember going to a conference, it was 20,000 people, and the amount of people that I saw on their phone was significant. It was at least 20% of people on their phone. And I know, because they were flying in from all over the world, I know they didn't fly in just so they could be on their phone, right? They wanted to connect, but they didn't know how. There weren't facilitated opportunities for them to actually connect, right? So we have to be looking, okay, what are we doing to make sure people are not in their groups, because usually you go with your work group and then you just hang out together the whole time. So it feels kind of cliquish, or people that have gone there multiple times. So they're all friends. But then what are we doing for the first timers? What are we doing for people that are sitting alone? Do we have strategies around that? We're going to explore that in a moment, right? But how are we making sure that connection and community is the priority of the event? Okay. And then lastly, and this is just for y'all, because y'all have to deal with this on a regular basis. Y'all have too many demands. Like, your clients are saying stuff, your attendees are saying stuff, your vendors and suppliers are saying stuff, your speakers are like, I need green M&Ms. And you're like, oh gosh, you're so annoying, right? Like, there's so many demands upon you that then we try to people please, right? And then what happens when we try to people please? It becomes a boring wedding. You know, those boring weddings, they're just average. They're not great. They're not bad. They're just like meh. They're like forgettable. And that's the last thing we want. We do not want a forgettable event. Like, and that's what happens when we people please. That's why my challenge to you, and I'll get into this in a little bit more detail, is like, figure out the culture that you're trying to actually create and communicate to your client. This is what we're trying to do. We want to deliver for you, but we're also going to deliver it through our style, rather than us having to compromise who we are and overpromise. Because I've found many event managers overpromising, and then they're stressed out the whole time, right? And because of that, it's not enjoyable. Like, you're not building quality connections during that, because you're like so worried about making sure everything is so perfect. Okay, so if we can wave a magic wand, how would we fix it through play? Let's dive into that, okay? So first thing, I really recommend determining the culture of the event. How do we want people to feel? How do we want them to feel when they walk in? How do we want them to feel while they're there? How do we want them to feel after a talk happens? How do we want them to feel when they're leaving? Like, I don't even think we think about the different moments throughout the entire event that actually matter, right? So like a great example of this, and mind you, all these suggestions wouldn't cost you anything to do, right? What happens when people check in? I don't think we spend enough time actually thinking about the experience of what happens. Like you go, you type in something, or you sign a badge, or someone is just like, let me look up your name, and then here's your badge, and then that's it. Like, it's so boring. There's no opportunity to create connection and community and establish the culture. You can establish culture right at the beginning of that. And a great example of that, I mean, some of you might be familiar with Daybreakers. Daybreakers was created by Radha Agarwal. It's a morning dance party that they have all across the world. I think they have like 150. But one of the things, and she wrote this in her book, Belonging, one of the most important things they do is greeting. How they greet people and how people leave. So they always have somebody to greet, whether they're giving them a hug or a high five or some level of huge connection from the beginning. Also recognizing that they're extroverts and introverts so that not everyone feels comfortable, but they spend enough time making sure you feel seen, you feel heard, you feel appreciated right as you're walking in. Right. And then when you're leaving, instead of being like, all right, see you later, or no one's saying goodbye to you at all, they are make sure that there's a whole ritual to it. So even having that conversation with your client, how do we want to greet them? How do we want people to walk in? Do we want a line of people with, they're giving away high fives, right? Do we want someone that is actually explaining, especially to the first timers, what you can actually partake of in this trade show or in this internal user conference? Like someone that actually feels as if a friend as soon as you arrive. Because usually when people show up, it's like high school all over again. It's like junior high, actually, where you're like, I don't know anybody. I'm a little worried. I'm a little scared. And when someone is just like greeting you by name, giving you a lay of the land, introducing you to someone else before you walk away so you don't feel alone, it's a huge thing that we do. And it's a missed opportunity that we can take advantage of. So we have to think about it. How do we welcome people? Then the other thing is how we create memorable moments. I would take your volunteers that you already have, whether it's an internal event or a sales conference or whatever, right? And you have volunteers that are just looking for people that are not speaking to anyone, looking for people that are on their phones. Some of them might be in work calls, right? So if that's the case, sweet, move on. But there's a lot of people that are just hanging around. They don't know what to do. Right. And so they go to their phone because that's the first thing you grab because you're like, well, I want connection with somebody. So if you have people that are there that are willing, and you can even have them practice this beforehand and find out what they need. Oh, well, what are you doing here? What's your reason for doing? Oh, you're trying to get a new job. Oh, you're trying to find a new way of like HRS system or something. Actually, I have some people that I could introduce you to. That helps tremendously, right? So the welcome, the finding people in the rooms, create that memorable event because that one connection, that one conversation can change their whole feeling on how they're doing this, okay? How they feel about the entire event. Up until that time, they'd be like, this kind of sucks. And then they have one good conversation. And then they're like, I'm going to come back here next year and I'm going to bring people, right? That's what happens, right? So your volunteers play a crucial role in actually doing that, okay? Now, I recommend creating opportunities for organic connection. And I'm not talking about the fancy activations. We don't have to spend thousands of dollars. I used to be one of those activation people. You don't need to spend money on that. You can, but just organic ones where people can gather. And this also helps for like introverts, the people that are, may not want to like connect with so many people, but they might just go to a needs and offering place where it's just like needs, I'm looking for this type of vendor, right? Offerings. This is the stuff that I'm offering, and then they can just go to the board anytime they want. This thing is free to do, right? There's so many easy ways in which to create organic connection like that, where you don't have to be spending so much money to do it, but you want quiet places where people can have, right? In addition to like maybe a yoga session, maybe, introverted, like a room that's a quiet room, right? But think about that, okay? And then encourage activations that foster connection. Challenge your vendors. Oh my gosh, I'm at a conference right now. So many pens, so many cups, so many t-shirts. Why are we continuing to do the same boring stuff? Challenge your vendors to create a playful way in which to interact, or reduce the amount of vendors that you have and just pick the ones that are fun. The ones that are fun are the ones that I would actually want to go back to. I do this conference with WorkHuman. They have activations that are really fun from specific vendors. That's why it's fun to be there, right? Not the same rote stuff. Challenge your vendors to show up when they're like, well, the ROI of this conference is not that good. Yes, because your booth sucks. The person you brought just looked at his phone the whole time. I'm challenging you to do something different, a little bit better, a little bit more playful, right? And then you'll actually get, people will look forward to the trade show. They'll look forward to actually talking to the vendors. And you won't have to just do those forced scavenger hunts, but something more fun. Like you discover something if you go to a certain booth, but we're not going to tell you what booth. Almost like Survivor or something like that. Like, play with the vendors. A lot of them want to do something new, but they don't know how. So coach them through that. All right, we got a little bit of time. All right, so we already did challenge of vendors. Okay, final one for this. I'm a speaker. I speak 70, 80 times a year. We talk too much. We talk way too much. You know, when you actually look at an agenda, right, it's mostly us talking. And if you think about it, people have come there for the connection. If I had to go to a party where they were like, hey, by the way, you go to this party, but you only get to talk to people for like 10 to 15% of the time, I'd be like, this is whack, dude. You know, so we speakers talk too much. So reduce our amount, right? We can do, I just did one for 30 minutes. Like, we could do a shorter talk, right? And then add to that an opportunity for processing, add to that opportunity for people to gather and then to talk amongst each other about it. Maybe not just like like they just do whatever they want, but maybe they process the content they just consumed. The problem right now is we're doing back to back to back talks. It's an overwhelming amount of information. If you're doing it over a 2-3 days period, people are drained by the third day. They've heard too many words and they learn better. As I was going to go back to this, they learn better. Studies, this is Harvard, by the way, they came out with this. Lectures are boring, but they're also not effective. Right? It's about active participation. We should actually be in circles when we're doing talks, not actually doing lectures. But if we're going to do lectures, then have breaks where people can actually connect in a more genuine, quality way. So, all right. So I covered a lot of different stuff. So determining the culture, again, what do we want not only the event to be, right, but how do we want people to actually feel throughout the event? And how do we know when we're matching the culture and how do we know when we're not? Establishing how people are welcomed, but I also mean how people are, the transition. I didn't talk about that enough, but I think I have some time. The transition between the different portions, right? I finish a speaker talk, they go to the break. Are they just having coffee? Is there other ways in which people can actually connect that way? Third, prioritizing community over aesthetics, right? If you're spending so much money on aesthetics, can you cut that budget a little bit, right? And use that to have more volunteers so they can connect with one another. Focusing on creating memorable events, look for the lonely people in the room and how you can actually build connection at that very moment. And then lastly, replace lectures. Cut our time, right? We're great, but we will talk forever if you let us do. Don't let us while out like that, right? Like, actually challenge of how we're going to do active listening. And maybe even, and this one's actually a really one that I like, maybe in the last day you have no lectures and you just have time to process all the information that you just had and figure out how am I actually going to implement it when I go home, right? So then there's actual tangible action steps rather than just a stack of notes and then you go back to your office and then you have 100 emails and then you never do anything again regarding that, right? So give time for people to process and give time people to play. The more time they have, the more time they can actually build connection and have a great time. That is my time. I'm Jeff Harry. All right, there we go. Boom. Whoo, Jess. I think Jess is muted.
sorry, everyone. Can't make it through this event without doing it at least one time. I think we all have to have our time to do it. So I will start over with what I was saying, which is thank you so much. And we really appreciate you coming on. That was a ton of info, and I'm excited to break it down here with Melissa.
Hey, everyone.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for joining us. Would you mind just giving the community an intro?
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Chang. I'm the event and field marketing lead here at Century, and I'm really excited to debrief about all this. I have so many notes to go through, but definitely love the session, Jeff.
For sure. What I wanted to point out is just an overarching theme that I'm seeing, not just from this session, but all of our sessions. And that's really just this focus on what is the attendee experience. I think so many times, like Jeff mentioned, we have all these people to please, and we may sometimes just forget, like, this is actually for our attendees. I think executives tend to forget that a lot too, because they're like, sell, 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 sell. What are you kind of thinking as you've seen these sessions come through, and your thoughts on attendee experience?
I think I wanted to put in perspective too that I was talking to someone earlier this week, is that training our staff to really understand new sales guys that are on the floor with us when starting their careers, and this is their first time they're at an event, and when they started their career, it was out through the pandemic. So I feel like I remember Jeff saying everybody's on their phones. I feel like they just resort back to it, and really understanding hey guys, go out of your comfort zone, go outside of the booth. And it's something I pushed my team a couple years, or last year and this year, of don't just stay in our perimeter, go outside, meet somebody new, grab somebody, make a new connection, and please go to the lunch and network, and not be on your phone or go back to your laptop. We're here at an event, you're here to connect, and make new prospects.
Yeah, I just paid $2,100 for your ticket, and you're sitting over there just doing the work you would have done if you were at home. We need engagement. We need engagements from our executives. We, just like kind of Liz and them said, if they're the first people that someone's talking to, that is going to make an impression upon someone way more than handing them a one-pager and saying, hey, read up on what we've got going on here.
Yeah.
And taking risks. We've got to get our executives on board to taking these risks, because no, we don't have the answer if everything's going to work out every single time, but we're never going to know if we don't try it, and we're never going to be different if we don't try it. So
it's been so tough when you're part of large brands and you're supposed to just stick to what's worked instead of thinking outside of the box, having new activities. And it's so true when they're saying you bring more fun to your booth, more people will come to you. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still stop. And when anybody has the magic show, or if anybody has some experience, because you kind of want to know what's going to happen at the end. But we recently just did a play, which I'm really excited that he mentioned it. We had a Lego section where we let people just make their own action figure. I even snuck in some new Marvel characters, and people were actually just making their own little figures to take home. So
no, I love Lego. Lego is such a great option for anyone who hasn't used it at an event. Definitely a great way to mix things up. It brings everybody kind of back into their childlike state. And I am not sponsored by Lego, but I do love them. One of the other things I really loved from Jeff's chat was just about sort of having that a sessions day, and then a day to kind of bring it all together and activate it. I really loved that idea. And I think, again, a lot of these ideas, they seem pretty easy to implement as far as cost wise. This is just kind of flipping some ideas again on their head. So yeah, that was really enjoyable.